Hello, and thank you for joining us for Building Basic Vocabulary Training. Building Basic Vocabulary is designed for middle and high school newcomer and beginning English language learners, as well as at-risk students. It is designed in order to provide them with the direct vocabulary instruction of basic high-frequency terms that are critical to understanding the English language. The lessons in Building Basic Vocabulary use Marzano's unique four-phase process to engage students and increase vocabulary acquisition. The outcomes for today's session is as follows. To meet the author, to identify the purpose of each program component, to understand the pedagogy and instructional design of Building Basic Vocabulary, and to explore program resources. Dr. Robert Marzano is the author of the Building Basic Vocabulary and the CEO and co-founder of Marzano Research Laboratory, which specializes in school reform efforts to enhance student academic achievement. Over his 40 years in education, he has translated research and theory into practice, and now he, along with National Geographic Learning, bring you Building Basic Vocabulary. Building Basic Vocabulary focuses on teaching basic vocabulary. A basic word is a high-frequency word because of its frequent appearance in both written and oral language. Underserved students are the primary targets of this program because they traditionally do not have exposure to the majority of these words. These students might not understand or be able to use these words because they are second language learners. There are about 2,800 basic words identified from an analysis of previous word lists organized into 420 semantic clusters, so multiple terms can be addressed at one time. Terms are then organized into clusters so that vocabulary can be taught in context. Three forms of instruction can be used with this program: whole class instruction, small group instruction, and individual instruction. Building on research presented in Teaching Basic and Advanced Vocabulary, a framework for direct instruction, the Building Basic Vocabulary program is designed to maximize student understanding of new words to allow for effective communication both in and out of the classroom. Dr. Robert Marzano, the author of Building Basic Vocabulary, specializes in these school reform efforts to enhance student academic achievement. Of course, all of the instruction is based upon his research. Let's take a look at the resources available through Building Basic Vocabulary. For teachers' resources, teachers receive a teacher's guide, an assessment CD-ROM with exam view, as well as online audio. The audio support reinforces the pronunciation and correct usage of new vocabulary. The CD-ROM allows teachers to prepare exams or online tests, and the test manager provides features to manage online tests as well as generate reports. The student resources are as follows: student books A, B, and C, and a vocabulary notebook. The table of contents included into the teacher's guide is as follows: classroom management and instruction, vocabulary routines, games, superclusters, books A, B, and C, and a cluster appendix. The key attributes of building basic vocabulary are as follows. There are flexible pacing options in order to meet the needs of whole class instruction, small group instruction, as well as individual instruction. The Tier 1 words are organized into clusters to help refine the student's understanding of basic terms. We know the vocabulary is a huge indicator of student success. This allows us to bring Marzano's rich pedagogy to life. The semantic cluster approach helps with differentiating instruction. It shrinks the instructional load. The more you get students to interact with language, the better. Marzano's approach in building basic vocabulary builds vocabulary focusing on 2,800 basic terms. These terms are not specific to any academic subject area. However, they are frequent enough in the English language that a student's ability to understand or use the English language is severely limited without the knowledge of these terms. These are terms that Marzano himself compiled, which has never been done before. And then they are arranged into superclusters and then further into clusters. The supercluster approach is built upon his research in the field. Building basic vocabulary equips English language learners and at-risk students with the basic words necessary for effective communication both inside and outside the classroom. These terms are organized into 420 semantic clusters and 60 superclusters. Here are the 60 superclusters. Let's take a look at classroom management and instruction. There are 3 paths for instruction using building basic vocabulary: whole class instruction, small group instruction, and individual instruction. Whole class instruction provides instruction and practice opportunities for all students in a class in the same content at the same time. It is important to analyze the class's overall understanding of terms, to identify gaps in understanding, and use this knowledge to inform instruction. Keep in mind the assessment CD-ROM with exam view can be used to assist with this process. Small group instruction provides instruction at specific levels or using instructional strategies that are tailored to the unique needs of specific groups of students. Groups can be formed according to the results of the process in the introductory phase of whole class instruction or by using the results of the assessment CD-ROM with exam view. Building basic vocabulary online practice is an effective method of providing individual instruction, as it allows students to work at their own pace and monitor their own progress. If internet access is unavailable, individual instruction can be implemented using the student books. This is an example of a pacing guide for whole class instruction. Now we are ready to look at the instruction for whole class and how the phases are embedded into the instructional path. For whole class instruction, students do not progress through the clusters sequentially. Rather, basic words are embedded in regular classroom instruction as needed. The instruction is divided into 4 phases. During the introductory phase, the teacher is in control of the lesson. The teacher uses an interactive process to provide direct instruction by explaining, modeling, and demonstrating key concepts related to the target terms. Phase 2 and Phase 3, the comparison and review and refinement phases, allow students to assume partial control of the lesson, and the teacher serves as a coach, circulating to check students' understanding, monitoring activity progress, and verifying or clarifying thinking as needed. The last phase, analyzing progress, is used to determine reteaching. Remember, these words are not taught in isolation, but rather through Marzano's 4-phase direct vocabulary instruction framework. Let's look at each phase in detail. Phase 1 consists of the introductory phase, where students are exposed to new terms through multiple modalities, visuals, audio, as well as student-friendly definitions. This phase lasts for approximately 20 minutes. During this phase, the students are exposed to the following: identifying the target terms. Students will study images in their student books. They will pronounce each term, and teachers will note the terms that the majority of the students do not know and target them for instruction. Keep in mind that students can be grouped for small group instruction using challenge words that are located at the end of each student book lesson for the cluster when they know all of the target terms. Teachers will then teach the target terms. By using the appropriate vocabulary routines that are included in the teacher's guide, as well as incorporating students' background knowledge to make connections for the target terms. Teachers will assist students with expanding their thinking. Students will share what they know about the target terms. Teachers will then move into teaching more challenging terms by discussing and modeling for the students. And lastly, teachers will check comprehension. Students will use the vocabulary notebook to enter the terms, draw illustrations, define terms, and write meaningful sentences using the terms. Let's take a look at Phase 2 in our direct instruction method. Phase 2 is the comparison phase. This phase allows students to compare the relationships between terms, and it enables the teachers to check for comprehension through various graphic organizers like T-charts and Venn diagrams, as well as through several sentence stems, and a lot more. The comparison phase lasts for approximately 15 minutes. This phase allows students the opportunities to explore relationships among terms using various activities. Teachers will teach students how to link similar items, how to use sentence stems, how to complete graphic organizers, and how to classify words. In addition, students will use analogies and metaphors. They will complete a comparison matrix. And, of course, teachers will check for comprehension. All of these activities allow for students to expand their comprehension and to note similarities among words. Phase 3 in our direct instruction method includes review and refinement. The review and refinement phase provides opportunities for students to play games and to participate in word study activities to make even more associations between related words. Students will be able to utilize games for review of the terms. Students will also add notes to their Building Basic Vocabulary notebook in order to develop comprehension and have the opportunity to create non-linguistic representations of terms. Students will review terms and assume partial control of the lesson while the teacher serves as a coach, thereby participating in the gradual release of responsibility. The review and refinement phase lasts for approximately 15 minutes. During this phase of direct instruction, teachers will present games to the students, encourage students to continue to add to their vocabulary notebook in order to self-monitor, and lastly, to check comprehension by observing and monitoring the students' level of comprehension during their games and in their vocabulary notebook. The final phase, phase 4, is where students will have the analysis and checks of their progress. Keep in mind that teachers will have the Exam View CD-ROM, which will allow them to administer assessments as well as to analyze their progress in order to determine the reteaching that will be necessary. The Analyze Progress phase will last approximately 5 minutes, and this process is used in the first step of the Introductory Phase as a repetition. Teachers will reteach terms that half of the class still have trouble with. During this phase, teachers will identify the target terms, students will study the images in the student book, students will pronounce each term, and teachers will note the terms that the majority of the students do not know and target these terms for reteaching as necessary. This is an example of an instructional plan for small group instruction. Keep in mind, for small group instruction, students will progress through the cluster sequentially. Or the teacher can also use the Exam View CD-ROM to indicate where along the continuum of 420 clusters each student needs to begin instruction. Let's take a look at how small group instruction is embedded by using Building Basic Vocabulary. Instruction for small groups is provided at specific levels tailored to the needs of specific groups of students. Groups can be formed according to the results of the whole class instruction during the introductory phase. Remember that the results of the assessment CD-ROM with Exam View will indicate where the students need to begin instruction. During the introductory phase, the teacher is once again in control of the lesson, using an interactive process to provide direct instruction by explaining, modeling, and demonstrating key concepts related to the target terms for each group. The comparison and review and refinement phases allow students to assume partial control of the lesson, and the teacher once again will serve as a coach, circulating to check students' understanding, monitoring activity progress, and verifying or clarifying thinking as needed for each small group. Analysis will be used to determine reteaching for each group. Now, leaning towards individual instruction. This is an example of an instructional path for individual instruction, keeping in mind that individual instruction will be implemented through building basic vocabulary online resources. However, if the internet is not available, the student book can also be utilized in including the individual instructional path. Now, the individual instruction path also includes those same instructional paths that were mentioned before. However, this is where the teacher can tailor to the whole class or small group procedures to meet the unique needs of the individual student. Keeping in mind the assessment CD-ROM with exam view or an individual educational plan will help determine those individual needs and designate the appropriate cluster in which to begin instruction. Within the teacher's guide, there are vocabulary routines to assist with direct instruction. There are 3 different routines included in the teacher's guide: concrete terms, abstract terms, and challenging grammar. In addition, there are 12 vocabulary building games included in the teacher's guide as well. They are pick and place, relay, puzzle challenge, matching, the odd couple, C is for clue, meaning makers, the stranger, guess who, cluster clamor, quiz show, and team effort. Thank you for joining us for the Building Basic Vocabulary training. Remember that Building Basic Vocabulary is designed for middle and high school newcomer and beginning English language learners as well as at-risk students. It was designed to provide them with direct vocabulary instruction of basic high-frequency terms that are critical to the understanding of the English language.